What if your pre-workout supplement is quietly sabotaging your gains? Many formulas spike your system with banned substances and cheap inferior forms of vitamins that can disrupt your neurotransmitters, tax your adrenals, and work against your long-term health. Kyal Vanderleest joins us to unpack what's really in your pre-workout and why certain ingredients like pyridoxine hydrochloride can sabotage your progress, and how you can upgrade your stack with smarter BioHarmonized compounds that energize you without wrecking your system. But if pre-workout supplements aren't your thing, don't worry, we cover a lot of other ground in this episode, such as a class of exercise mimicking ingredients called exercise mimetics, powerful small molecules like 5-amino-1-MQ, as well as the recently popular SLUPP332. We talk about T2 and the peptide apidolon, as well as a satiety and weight loss peptide called DNF10. All that and a whole lot more with our guest this week. He is Kyal Vanderleest, a nutritionist, naturopath, and functional health coach turned supplement formulator behind the company LVLUP Health. And I have used a bunch of their different products. I have their Total Recomp formula in front of me, their Methylene Blue product, their testosterone optimizer, their peptide-based nootropic, and their longevity formula. My personal favorites, as I mentioned in the episode, are their Total Recomp, which is the exercise in a pill formula, as well as their pre-workout, which doubles as a nootropic, and it has a solid formula. I don't usually use pre-workouts, but this is the exception. And in this episode, you'll understand why. If you want to try their products, you can use the code URBAN on leveluphealth.com, or you can click the link in the show notes, which will be at outlier.com, outlier.com/209. And if you want to revisit last week's episode to catch the first part about how to formulate properly, you can find that at outlier.com, outlier.com/208. These formulas are a bit pricey, but once you use them, you feel them, you turn the bottle around, and you look at the dosages of the star ingredients, you'll understand why. So use the code URBAN to save 15%. Now on to the interview with Kyal. Kyal, welcome back to the show. The episode last week, we discussed your approach to formulations and how people can figure out what exactly is going to work for them. And today I want to discuss some of the things that I've used that have worked for me. And before we get started, I want to recap an email I got from you just the other day. And that was an email that said that your pre-workout is robbing your gains. Why is that?
Cortisol, in short. And I guess a lot of pre-workouts have terrible forms of vitamins. The ones that, if they even use them, to be fair, but forms I really hate are pyridoxine hydrochloride, B6, HCl. If you're not using P5P, you are basically driving a B6 deficiency. It will bind but not give you the effects of B6, in which that has really significant impacts on your homocysteine levels, for example, on your neurotransmitters. B6 is a key cofactor for neurotransmitter synthesis. So if you're using HCl B6, get it out of there. The supplement industry needs to stop using that. It's about 16 to 18 times cheaper than P5P. So that's why it's used. And for people who don't know better or don't care, or, that's why it's being used ubiquitously.
Before we go on to that, I'll underscore what you just said about vitamin B6, and that is one of the things I look at when I'm evaluating supplements in general. If I flip over the back panel and I look under the nutrition facts and I see that they use the inactive form of vitamin B6, pronunciation I think is pyridoxine hydrochloride, and they don't use vitamin P5, or they don't use the P5P form, then I will just put the product back down because it shows that they're not even willing to use the high quality ingredients. And with the inactive form of vitamin B6, the potential toxicity, like the window to cause that, is very low. I think it's like 25 milligrams a day or something, or maybe it's 50. And a lot of products will have about that much in it. And then you can't get the beneficial active form. And the symptoms aren't always that severe in the short term, but they can be like very dangerous if you're consuming this across multiple products over a long period of time.
Yeah, it can impair the neurotransmitter levels. It can actually cause nerve damage. That's a peripheral neuropathy. That's the big issue with it, like prolonged tingling in distal joints, numbness, burning sensation. So like it needs to be converted to active form, which then puts burden on methylation pathways too. It's actually meant to support methylation, and then you use this form and then you're hindering it or robbing methylation. So it's ridiculous, and it just needs to be binned along with folic acid, which is again pretty much the same thing. Like it's inactive, needs to be converted to MTA, methylated folate, for it to then work on increasing SAMe and helping methylation. Like methylation is probably one of the, we've been talking about it, you and I, for probably 5 years, but I think it's now hitting the mainstream. People like Gary Brecker really overemphasize the importance of it, but it's still like very important. So is COMT, and so is like supporting the hundreds of other enzymatic pathways in your body. And every form of vitamin has the potential for you to supplement something synthetic. Like there's like B1, for example, no issues in my opinion with this one, but there's like tiers to it. You can go for like a derivative like TTFD or benthophyamine, the fat soluble B1. And then there's like 3 other forms of B1, which all have different bioavailability, different efficacy, and different levels of conversion that's required for them then to be bioidentical to what your body uses. And I am bringing out a B vitamin that does not have a single form that is not bioidentical to what your body needs. So that's one way that supplements in general are kind of robbing your health gains. But if you want to leave B vitamins alone, we can leave B9 and B12. I think they're kind of done to death. B12 doesn't necessarily hurt you if you use cyanocobalamin. It just doesn't mean you're just not going to absorb it and end up with a cyanide molecule. What are the other ones like? Never mind. We'll leave the B vitamins. But yeah, the other ways is just overstimulation of the adrenals. Like a lot of pre-workouts have so much caffeine or hordenine and dynamine and all these other, I've forgotten the term for methylamines or something like that. And they directly increase cortisol. And that's a good thing for your workout gains. Like there's no doubt caffeine is an ergogenic aid for workout performance, but if you are ramping your adrenals up to 11 every single morning or every single workout, then you will be depleting your minerals. You will be in, I guess, more of a catabolic state. Like that is, cortisol is, not good for your gains. So this is why I really like new ingredients like paraxanthine. It will give you that mental stimulation, that dopamine effect, and you will feel more wired and more ready to do your workout without necessarily having to worry about your adrenals getting completely overburdened and overtaxed. There's other ways that pre-workouts aren't doing things well. Like they'll use things like just arginine, like a heap of arginine in the product, and think that gets absorbed when all it will do is just create a heap of vasodilation in your gut, but not actually get to your muscles. Things like L-citrulline are a lot better. But even then, like you can overdose things like citrulline. It's arginine and lysine kind of balance each other. And then if you are overdoing the pump ingredients, then you might end up, as a balance perspective, low on lysine and be more predisposed to viral infections or getting sick. So everything, again, the bell-shaped curve, I'm a broken record talking about that, but that's really part of the reason why I don't like the supplement industry too much. And they've always pushed short-term gains over long-term health. And yeah, by using fake forms of vitamins, by overtaxing the adrenals, and by not actually supporting, leaving you worse off than when you began. I don't ever like pre-workouts for that purpose. The other thing, which I admit my product has sucralose, I really did not want to use it, but I just had to get it out there. It took over a year and a half of development and tasted so bad because we actually used all of the doses of all of the adaptogens, all the active B vitamins and things like uridine monophosphate, paraxanthine. They all tasted so bad that we just put it out. And I don't stand by my pre-workout. Don't buy it. I'm doing another one with natural flavors, but it would not rob your gains. It will only cause a bit of gut issues if you don't do well with sucralose. But there are brands doing it right now, and we will be in our next run one of those brands. But yeah, it's a tricky industry to be a part of, and it's kind of sad to see the ones that have like 100,000 units purchased that have like 500 milligrams of caffeine and nothing to support your adrenal function, or, you know, just completely put people, you know, bring them up and then dump them back down on the other end. So
actually, I'm a big fan of your pre-workout, and I did notice the other day that it had sucralose. I was kind of bummed about that, but I looked at the formula in general, and what I love is that you really support a lot of different facets of performance, starting with electrolytes. Like that's a big one for me and everyone really. And you don't just use like super salt-based heavy electrolyte. You use coconut water powder, which is a great source of like the more bioavailable natural form of electrolytes. Then you also add in some cool, fancier ingredients like alpha ketoglutarate, and you support dopamine via paraxanthine, which is already more dopaminergic than caffeine is. But then you also have some of the other precursors to dopamine like N-acetyltyrosine, L-tyrosine, NALT, and L-tyrosine. But then you also have alpha GPC to further enhance acetylcholine and power output. I think there's research around that. You also got some adaptogens in there. You got uridine and the methylated form, the active form of the B vitamins. So to me, that's a solid formula. I just add a little of my own essential amino acid powder in there and I'm good to go. I'll admit I've never actually used 2 scoops. I only use 1 scoop, so half of a serving, and I still feel like it's jet fuel without like being too stimulated.
I'm going to take a step back. I'm very hard on myself and my formulas. And if sucralose in the smallest possible dose we can use is the worst thing in that formula, it's not too bad. So I'll take it back. There's a lot of really good things in there that I can't let I think for the whole thing, less than a gram of sucralose ruin the whole 500 grams of active. But yeah, I just tried my best to make it really good. Balancing the stimulant effect with theanine and using TeaCrine instead of caffeine, for example. Yeah. That's another way. Like that is a stimulant that's not going to result in you developing tolerance, and it doesn't bring you up to this 10 out of 10 energy level. It's more of a subtle thing. And paraxanthine I've never found that hits as hard as caffeine or something like dynamine, but it still gives you a good dopaminergic boost. It doesn't elevate your blood pressure. It doesn't cause, you know, anxiety or anything like that, like the other ones may do. And tyrosine, I think, is just fantastic. It's not going to be a workout aid, but necessarily, but by increasing your motivation and, you know, your desire to get your workout done, like that's fantastic too. And the coconut water powder is one of my favorite things to use. It's a little bit carby if people don't want to necessarily have any sugars, but it's just a really good way to deliver minerals, as well as the next version we're bringing out. We're even bolstering it with sucrosomal magnesium and getting like electrolyte powder levels of minerals added to it, as well as completing the full spectrum of the B vitamins. For this one, it's just B3, 6, 9, and 12, which for the most part do most of what you'd need for exercise performance and energy. But, you know, we wanted to make a pre-workout that, unlike what we mentioned earlier, that it takes from your gains. Well, this one leaves you better off than you are after using it than you did prior to taking it. So by increasing your electrolyte levels, licorice root, bacopa, uridine, these are all supporting your brain and your adrenals. Alpha GPC is super beneficial for focus, especially when combined with paraxanthine and tyrosine. Like, you're going to have a very significant pick-me-up mentally, even if you don't work out. Like, there's no obligation in taking this to work out. I take it sometimes and just go and do my work because I got extra motivation and I feel better for having taken it. So whereas other ones, like if you don't use your workout, they might mega dose beta alanine, so you get the tingles, which doesn't really help you feel good. And then, you know, the amount of caffeine, if you don't use that in a workout, then you'll feel not particularly good. So
yeah,
that's the rationale behind that product.
Yeah, I also like that you added beta alanine because that's good for endurance to help buffer lactate. And then also you have Schizandra, which is another adaptogen, and Bacopa. A lot of days when I will use this, I try and use it before afternoon, so I'm not stimulated into the evening. I'm kind of sensitive to some stimulating ingredients. But then I won't even use any other nootropic throughout the day. It'll be my pre-workout and my nootropic all in one, just from 1 scoop too. I'm curious how I'll do with 2 scoops. But this was like a very pleasantly surprising pre-workout, because I used to take these like very strong stimulating pre-workouts before every workout many years ago, and I stopped. And it's nice finding a product that actually has the right forms and the right ingredients, and like you said, leaves you better than you found it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a consumer of them. I, like you, like what you used to be until recently, when now you're back to it. I do take pre-workouts almost every time I do a heavy lifting thing. I just love an ergogenic aid and like to take something as a ritual. So having that, it's all, honestly, it's part of the reason why I make most of my products is I'm taking it anyway. Therefore, I want to make it better and have it for myself. So that's why I made this one. And the new version we're bringing out is using all the patented ingredients like New Level. We'll have Genius Pure from NMB and Salidra Pure, the extract from rhodiola, the pure salidroside. So that is fantastic for nootropic benefits too. That one will probably come in about, the version 2 of that will probably come out in about 2 to 3 months. So sort of around July to August, just because of how complex it is. I think ingredients wise, we have like 7, 14, like almost 30 ingredients in it, which will make it the best, hopefully, pre-workout on the whole market. And again, getting it right though, without using sucralose will be the harder thing. Will probably take a bit longer, but I'm confident now we'll be able to do it.
One of the things I mentioned that also I find interesting that no one really talks about is that having a little bit of glucose in your system, whether it's before a workout or it's before engaging strenuous mental work, is actually important to deliver the substances and to give your brain and your body the energy. And it can even help offset some of the rise in cortisol that can accompany these things. So the small amount you're getting from some coconut water powder is probably doing more benefits than detriments, even if you're following like say a strict ketogenic diet. Maybe not hyper strict, but just like a fairly strict.
I think it's pretty common knowledge for those who do follow ketogenic diets to understand that their workout gains are probably not going to be what they would be if they weren't following it. The reduction in glycogen stores in your muscles alone is going to be a hindrance to your strength. Like there are outliers to it, of course, but for me, when I'm on keto or really carb restricted, I do feel flatter in the muscles, and I definitely don't have the same strength that I would have otherwise. The other thing as well is carbs are beneficial for creatine absorption. Like you mentioned to me that you don't respond well to creatine. Well, there could be lots of reasons why, maybe a creatine transporter genetic thing, or I don't know, just sometimes people just don't respond. But carbs used to be, people used to combine orange juice with their creatine back 10, 20 years ago to increase the creatine absorption. So carbs are very powerful. And even things like glycerol, like I really like Hydroprime as a form of glycerol. It improves, your pumps and the exercise performance. Like these are really good ingredients for exercise performance. So it really depends on your goal. Like if you want to lose weight and you're taking a product whilst you're doing cardio or whilst you're trying to lose as much weight, then probably having additional carbohydrates aren't going to help you achieve that goal. But if you want to be strong, if you want to gain muscle, then take some carbs, even if it's a higher amount. If you're doing the workout, they're not going to be turned into fat. They're just going to be used in your workout. You probably won't even see a spike in your blood sugar levels if you're taking it within 10 minutes pre-workout, and it's not like a glucose or something that spikes it instantly. So, and even afterwards too, if you take a small amount too, it's just going to go into restoring your glycogen levels in your muscle and never end up being fat. So again, like a U-shaped curve, what you're trying to achieve, carbs are not the enemy, that's for sure. And even honey, like you can use honey as a pre-workout thing too. I do that when I feel a little bit low blood sugar.
There's a book called Peak by Dr. Mark Bubbs, I think. I think it's Peak. He's talking about how one of the better ways that endurance athletes fuel themselves instead of using the sports gels is with honey, because it has a much lower glycemic rebound. So your blood sugar spikes up a little bit, not as high, but then it doesn't crash as low. And therefore you stay more in the sweet spot and you get better sustained energy.
Exactly right. I really like, and I use this in Crevolution, it's called Cluster Dextrin, HBCD. That has been shown not to spike your blood sugar too much, but it's very readily available carbohydrate source that doesn't end up being converted to fat. It will increase the creatine absorptions, why I use it. But then if you were to take that pre-workout, you're going to get the benefits of that cluster dextrin for, an hour or 2 hours of, fueling using the glucose as fuel for your mitochondria. So that's, there's even whole communities, I don't know how familiar you are with them, but people who follow Ray Peat's teachings, like they are the opposite end of keto, the keto and Peats and then carnivores. And there's just so many different things. And every one of them has merit. Like I can't argue a lot of the things that the Peters say. But then there's no nuance to insulin resistance, and sometimes they're wrong on other things, and then carnivores are wrong on other things or right on certain things. So it's just about again, going back to what we said in the last episode, is measuring where you're at, seeing how you feel, doing your bloods, doing your hormone testing, and qualitatively and quantitatively seeing how you respond to things.
Yeah, Ray P was way ahead of his time on a lot of really like trendy topics now, like red light therapy and the sex hormones and estrogen and what was the other one? PUFAs and omega-6 like seed oils, tons of things like that, but also like the mitochondrial or energetic basis, that like bioenergetic paradigm of health and like improving cellular energy, reducing cellular waste products, like reactive oxygen species, that kind of stuff. Like that's going to usually do a good job across the board, a lot of different things, but how do you actually get there? And I think there's some individual variation there that there's the merit in each of the different camps.
Exactly right. And the methylene blue too. He's the first guy I ever heard about methylene blue through. So
Yeah.
hat nod to their peak community. That's been a very powerful ingredient that I've used to offset the effects of EMFs. I've used it to help repair my mitochondria from mold damage. I use it as much as makes sense for nootropic benefits. Yeah, it's just one of these ingredients I really like. And also the anti-parasitic and antifungal effects it has when you take it in a capsule instead of just sublingually for the brain benefits. It's a really cool ingredient, and I love that it's one of these ingredients that's gaining mainstream popularity. I think Kennedy was putting it on the plane, and now everyone's talking about what it is, and it's a really cool ingredient. I'll be bringing that out with LVLUP soon as well.
Oh, really? And what delivery mechanism is that going to be?
In a capsule, interestingly. Everyone's doing it in droppers, and there's plenty of them available, but I really like it in capsules. I'm going to combine
powder?
Yeah, powdered. I'm going to combine it with functional fillers, acetyl-L-carnitine, PQQ, and ubiquinol, just a mitochondrial.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that'll be out in probably 2 weeks' time.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. I was looking for a source of methylene blue powder a long time ago. Very hard to find pharmaceutical grade methylene blue powder. It's much easier to find in liquid form. Cool that you found it. And I was actually going to suggest that you come up with a mitochondrial optimization stack, but you already are.
There it is.
Oh, nice.
Label, it'll be cool. I really like it. And I've used a few other brands, liquids. I've used prescriptions. If you want to use a Troche, that'll work better for nootropic effects. Directly, goes to your brain, that one. So I'd never say don't use theirs over this. This is just going to be a general, like you could take it daily, or might help with, for me, I've had issues with candida having lived in mold. So it has that dual benefit for that effect. So yeah, it's just, again, like I take all these things and like, you know what, I probably should just make this myself. That way I can be sure of the quality and I can have plenty of it for myself without having to rely on other companies.
I like that. So I want to talk about this product right here, Total Recomp. I have it in front of me. I got it because I was looking at the ingredient profile like I often do. And as soon as I saw certain things on the label, I immediately became fascinated and have been playing around with it a bit. Tell me why you chose DNF10 peptide and then also SLUPP332 and T2. Those were the ones that really caught my eye, and perhaps there's others there that I should have also taken as much interest in, but those were the ones I found the most fascinating in this formula.
Now they're the heavy hitters. You've nailed it with that one. So the DNF10 is it's hydrolyzed peptides derived from Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a yeast that is pretty well studied too, to support satiety, to help your metabolism, and is basically an appetite suppressant. That's primarily the main reason I use that one. It was in, like, what you have in your hand is the version 2. Version 1, I had DNF10, but I did not have the other peptide called SLUPP332. That is a small molecule, but everyone thinks it's a peptide. Thank you for that little question that steered me on the right direction. That one works via agonism of the estrogen-related receptors. And essentially, like, it just is a one-sentence summary. It's like exercise in a pill. It will give you the effects of exercise. It's one of these exercise mimetics similar to L-Beta that essentially helps with AMPK activation, helps fat loss, thermogenesis, reduces fat mass, and it's combined with all the other things that I put in it to support thyroid health, to support blood sugar and glucose disposal, to support lipolysis via like LCAR and GBB. it just essentially, again, we spoke about it in the last one. How do I formulate? Well, I reverse engineer all of the processes that I feel go into fat loss, for example. There are ingredients for appetite suppressant. That DNF10 is the primary one for that. Thermogenics, things like albabar can cause sweating. I was going to use tesofensine in it as well, but having used that one as a standalone and had not such great effects, I chose not to, thankfully. Exercise mimetics, thyroid supporters, and just like it was my attempt at losing weight. Because when I lived in mold, unfortunately, it's just how it works. You develop leptin resistance with chronic mycotoxin exposure. Despite having a really good diet and trying exercise, despite my adrenals being cooked from constantly having toxin exposure, I did gain a bit of weight. So this was my remedy to that. Grains of paradise. I've put so many different things into that formula to try and support weight loss that I'm really, really proud of it and really liking the benefits so far for myself. I don't know what you've experienced from it. You hadn't shared that yet, but intellectually, it seemed pretty good on paper. Hey.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the SLUPP332 works on estrogen. I think that's going to come across as a bit of surprise to people that estrogen also can be like exercise in a pill and exercise mimetic. Can you break that down a little more?
So it works on estrogen-related receptor alpha. So there's so many different mechanisms for how estrogen works in the body. We spoke about it in 2023, but testosterone actually works on estrogen receptors too. That helps with muscle growth. But estrogen-related receptors, it's not all bad. Like estrogen as a hormone is associated with softening, with weight gain if you've got excess amounts of it. But like everything has its own sort of way that it can work in your body, and specific subsets of these receptors, like there's alpha, beta, there's different ones like that. And it works on this one specific thing. It's like a SERM. And even things like, I've forgotten, it's from soy isoflavones, they're SERMs as well. Like soy, I would avoid like the plague, but the active constituents from that might have certain benefits for things like estrogen receptor positive cancers, for example. So it works by that effect to then downstream work on AMPK as the primary thing, but it also has effects on PPAR. It's a PPAR and agonist, I believe. Sorry, I'm just trying to get into the weeds on this one and not sort of cross-tangle my mechanisms too much. But yeah, and mitochondrial support too. It really helps upregulate, enhances mitochondrial function and exercise endurance by increasing your metabolism.
Yeah, so I've played around with it at a bit higher of a dose, and I do notice that it has like a number of different effects. With things that are gonna overclock your mitochondria, so to speak, to upregulate its function, perhaps in your new stack, are you adding anything? Because like if you drive faster, your car might create more exhaust, and your mitochondria might act similarly. When you're creating more energy, you're going to have more byproducts. And if you're not very healthy or not in optimal health, all your pathways aren't working properly, you might create that more like cellular exhaust with reactive oxygen species. Are you adding anything into your formulas to like help mitigate that and make it easier on the body?
Not necessarily. And this is a nuance to fat burners too. If they work too well and you're losing fat really fast, then often you, as well as, you end up with a lot of accumulated toxin soon being liberated, and then it puts a burden on your liver and has to be cleared. One of my good friends and was quite overweight, and when I put him on a really good diet, he lost a heap of weight, but then he looked really sick because he had a lot of accumulated toxins in his fat. So any weight loss program, any fat burner that actually works is going to potentially, if you're not supporting your clearance of toxins with liver support or doing regular saunas, can actually result in you not feeling as good because of the stored toxins in the fat. As far as kicking up reactive species, I feel like that only will occur if you've got issues with metals as well, like not just intracellularly stored, but anything that impairs mitochondrial function. And this is where we go to look at your organic acids tests to see how your Krebs cycle is functioning, to see how your electron transport chain is functioning. And in an optimized system, you should be able to push the pedal down on the accelerator without breaking anything. But it's one of those things, like you do need more energy, and more energy often results in increased repair, increased mitochondrial biogenesis, increased synaptogenesis, improved healing. So it's one of these things where you want to push it as high as what makes sense. But then if you push it too far and you don't have inefficiencies in the system, they're probably something that you need to deal with. Heavy metals, microplastics, estrogen mimicking things for like tap water, all the other things that people would need to detox that could be causing the root cause of issues that aren't just associated with fat gain, but are associated with disease processes. We spoke about this offline before our episode, and we spoke about cancer, and I mentioned like what causes cancer, what I think causes cancer anyway. It's carcinogens, it's forever chemicals, it's microplastics, it's things like glyphosate and pesticides and heavy metals. All those things are directly clogging up your mitochondria. It's reactive nitrogen species from EMF. It's excessive reactive oxygen species from maybe too much polyunsaturated fat consumption. There's so many things that go into it that I don't feel like peptides or even fat burners are going to cause problems with that, or things like dihexa, for example. It's the combination of you still having the things that are impairing mitochondrial function in your cells, in your fat, and then trying to push other things whilst not dealing with the real, I guess, root cause of the problem and why you have mitochondrial dysfunction in the first place. If you have really healthy mitochondria, I don't see there being anything in this that's going to push you to the point of breaking or to have quote unquote bad, dirty off-gassing or dirty fumes coming out of your exhaust. But if you do, then, you know, again, like any good product, right? You're pushing something, it can come at a cost. Like if you're a finely tuned Formula One car versus a 30-year-old car that's been serviced once, you know, it's not going to be, it's not comparable, right? Like we ultimately in health optimization try to get ourselves to that level of, we want to be the Ferraris of the world. We want to make sure we've got the best wheels, we've got the best engine, we've got the best fuel that's not full of toxins, you know, like we don't want ourselves to be anything other than optimal. And that's when using these things like neuroregenerate for boosting brain function, or using total recomp for improving mitochondrial function, we want to be able to take these without there being consequences. So there's a lot of foundational things that I think LVLUP products don't necessarily address that I think need to be addressed first. And that's just nutrition. Like a multivitamin is going to be great. Doing some level of detox if it's warranted. I think most people, it is warranted nowadays. Doing sauna, doing exercise, movement, rebounding, lymphatic work, all that's really important. And then a lot of these products are kind of just like the icing on top of the cake, really, for people's health. It's like if you want to take it to that next level, once you've got the foundations right, then these are just going to be phenomenal. But again, like everyone's different. Everyone's bio-individuality, toxic load, and mitochondrial function is going to be different. So yeah, long-winded way of saying, I don't think it's going to hurt you, but you know, if you're full of toxins, might not feel particularly good on it. Who knows? Yeah,
I hate that I keep coming back to the fact that detox is increasingly necessary. And not only will you cap some of the downsides that you'd experience if you didn't have that toxic burden, but also if you're looking to get to a high level of performance, then the more toxins you have in your body, the more noise there is, the less you're able to discern the signal, and you're just like having to take a bunch of things just to try and get back to baseline. But if your baseline's already clean and clear, then everything else you add is more effective to begin with.
If I could only do one biohack, it would be sauna. Like that's just going to do so many things for everything. I've upgraded my sauna recently by putting an ozone generator within it and kind of making my own Hocat at home. My Hocat's a really cool ozone sauna where you bathe in like 50% ozone, and it is, their marketing claim is it's 7 times more powerful than a regular sauna. And from looking at the stuff that comes out on your towel, like I've got mycotoxins galore to get rid of. So it's making a very significant difference to my and my partner's health since adding the ozone to it. Sauna will accomplish that. You just probably need to do a lot more of it. But other things, rebounding lymphatic drainage.
Wait. I'm curious. You built your own Hocat. Do you have like is there a guide that you followed, or are you just, I'm guessing you're not pumping ozone into your sauna, and that you have like some kind of setup that like keeps your head outside of the unit or something?
I have a Therasage, one of those portable tent ones, the full spectrum. I don't know if you know the brand, but they have the near and far infrared in it. Your head sticks out. I seal it up with a towel so I'm not breathing in ozone, have a fan in case it comes out, and then inside of it's ozone, and it's kind of less safe than if you were at a HOCAT, which is a hard shelled sauna. But, you know, for compliance and not having to drive an hour each day there and back to a clinic that has one, if you can have your own HOCAT at home, fantastic. You've got a lot of money, probably because it's like $60,000, but this is only like a $1,500 setup for me to be able to do that. And I'm really started recommending it, provided people do their due diligence. Because if you breathe in ozone, your lungs are not going to like you at all. I've done that and actually was coughing like 3 or 4 days and did a bit of lung damage. Not from doing the sauna. I was clearing out some mold in a past home and had to run back in. But ozone is incredibly beneficial for the body, and HOCATs are fantastic. I'll sing their praises for the coming years, I'm sure, because of all the benefits I've got from that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of ozone. I have an ozone therapy system. I use it in a bunch of different forms. And I also use sauna. I haven't combined the two because I didn't realize you could create your own HOCAT at home. That's a cool system. I'm going to have to look into that.
Just make sure it's sealed up and don't use it in a wooden one, because obviously you're going to breathe in ozone and not have a very good time.
Yeah, I thought you had like a mask on your, I mean, your eye. You don't want to get ozone on your eyes either. So I guess you don't really have, your head has to be outside of it, and there has to be a seal of some sort.
Yeah, the HOCATs, you have your head sitting out as well. And in my little Therasage or equivalent one, you could do the same thing, provided it seals though. The good thing about Therasages is it's very well sealed. So yeah, it's being very safe at the moment. Like I'm not putting out medical advice for people, and I don't want people to hurt themselves. So please be careful with it. But yeah, it's certainly one way to supercharge your saunas. And then you combine things like TUDCA and NAC to support your liver while you're in the sauna. Taking a really good binder is something that's really helped me as well. I'm working on my own, but for the most part, like it's not going to be too dissimilar to what Quicksilver Scientific or Cellcore have. There's a really good as well. So anything with there's a bentonite clay I really like, activated charcoal, and chitosan, or yeah, it's cholestyramine is the pharmaceutical one that is stronger than chitosan, but chitosan's just derived from mushrooms and it binds bile. So when you are clearing mold, one of the primary ways in which mold is cleared is through bile, and that's why TUDCA is so powerful for mold detoxification. But then on the other end, if you're pushing it out without it being cleared properly, a chitosan or cholestyramine can really help clear that. So that's why they're used in MCAS and SIRS and mold illness, that cholestyramine is. But chitosan's like a more gentle, natural way of doing it. I really like modified citrus pectin too for that, as well as zeolite. I'm a little bit 50-50 about.
And why is that?
I've heard like unless it's like really, really, really pure, and this applies to, I guess, a lot of the binders, that you can actually be ingesting heavy metals and toxins. Like it's already bound to a metal, and then you put it in a capsule and then just take a binder with a metal in the capsule, versus it needs to be tested for purity. When I bring out a binder, it will definitely have all the purity reports for metals. That's definitely another reason why supplement quality is important.
Frustrating, but it is the way it is. Have you played around with CO2 therapy at all? Like I was thinking perhaps pumping it into your sauna as like another gas you could play around with.
You know, interestingly, when I worked at the Hyperbaric Center, the director had CO2 therapy that he was going to play around with, and he had nitrogen as well. So, but I never actually hung around long enough to see how that resulted as far as clinical outcomes for the patients. I don't think anyway, I haven't tried either of those, no. But I have seen the CO2 saunas as well. Have you tried those?
No, I haven't, but I've been looking into different ways of administering CO2. Like obviously you can breathe it, but then also there's a suit you can wear that I've seen that some people claim to get good results from. I don't know. I haven't actually used it, and I'd be curious what it yields for people, if it's actually worth using, because it's a pain to put a suit on and pump it full of CO2 and then hang around in the suit for a while. And so I was curious if you had used that at all.
I think the Ray Peat Forum would probably have something on that. They're a really big fan of CO2 as well, to nod our head to them again.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably where I came across it a long time ago. In your total recomp formula, you have T2, and people tend to use T3 and T4 for thyroid support. I've only come across one other person that has a T2 supplement a long time ago, and it seems like it has some pretty unique properties as compared to the others, which are also regulated and unavailable over the counter.
Yeah, well, I've played around with, again, Ray Peat, using topical T3 and T4, and for fat loss, using it was really good. But then I don't want to downregulate my own endogenous thyroid function, and yeah, I don't want to mess with my own thyroid. Like getting that right, it's a really good kickstart to use those ones. But the reason I really like T2 is because that's like the form, it gets converted from inactive T4 to active T3, and then intracellularly it becomes T2. So T2 doesn't mess around with that feedback loop that from TSH to T3. And you can bring it in to sort of jumpstart to help thyroid work intracellularly and to help mitochondrial function. So that's primarily why I like it. And as a weight loss aid, thyroid was the best thing that I've ever used as drops. So I'm like, well, T2 has a very high safety profile. It's in microgram amounts. It works orally, and it's not highly regulated like these other ones. So I'm like, well, that just makes sense. I'm trying to support people's thyroid health because this is often something that like a lot of people have issues. You hear like almost comically people say, oh, I got a glandular problem. Well, that gland is probably the thyroid. And your problem is you probably got fluoride and chlorine and bromide and all those other things preventing iodine from being, and maybe a tyrosine deficiency if you're vegan again. But I really like T2. It works. It worked really well for me when I played around with it in isolation. And, I just wanted people to feel the benefits of having an optimal thyroid, because when it comes to feeling energized, like you can artificially inflate it with caffeine or nootropics. Like you can almost artificially or just transiently feel really energized from them, but it doesn't last. It might last, but not as well as having a proper functioning thyroid. Like anyone who's had thyroid issues, they've got malaise, they've got fatigue, they've got brain fog. Iron deficiency is one of the big drivers of it, iron and iodine deficiency. So bringing in T2 is a way to kind of give you that energy and to help the thyroid work better without actually having to use iodine, because I don't like supplementing iodine for the general population. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. It might be someone's absolute savior, and it might, cause some, thyroid autoimmunity to be worsened or something like that. So I don't use that. So I use selenium and the T2 in this one to try and support. And Coleus forscoli is a really good herb that helps support the thyroid as well. And yeah, when you have a really good working thyroid, your metabolism is going to be higher. Again, like it's similar to the what we were talking about before, where if you get things working better, then you can definitely have some other issues with it. But yeah, I really liked using T2. I don't know what your experiences were using it, but it is a lot safer than using those other ones because of no risk of suppression, or minimal, if any, risk of suppression.
Coleus forscolin, that's used in like the classic nootropic stack called Siltep.
Is it? Okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I think like one of the early nootropic stacks from like, I want to say 10, 15 years ago, the pre-made ones. It was that and a couple other things, and it was called like, now it's made by Natural Stacks, and it's called like Neurofuel or something, but that's the first time I came across that. So I guess some nootropic effects out of Total Recomp as well.
Yeah, well, I knew forscolin had a modest level of benefit for the brain, but yeah, and if it's in a nootropic stack, it must be a bit better than I thought.
All right, I want to go into your longevity formula now too, because you had some of the typical things that I see in a lot of longevity stacks, and that is like NAD precursor like NMN or NR. You also added some other things in here, such as quercetin and fisetin, but then also pterostilbene and JBSNF and epidolon. And epidolon is like one of the ones I haven't seen in an oral formula. I'm not even sure is it orally bioavailable?
Yeah, it is. It's small enough. It's below that 500 kilodalton range that it will work orally. It's just, again, you have to be a bit smart with how you use it. It might degrade a little bit. So it is dosed relatively high. And again, you asked how I dose things in the last one. Well, understanding the bioavailability of things like you can use less NACET because if it's greater bioavailability versus NAC at only 1 or 2%. Or with peptides that don't have great absorption like GHK or epidolon, I dose it higher, sort of allowing for like that potential of loss of about 50 to 60%. So if you're only getting 40% of the dose, you're still in that clinical, effective range. But yeah, I used epidolon because that is fantastic for, I think it's for telomeres in how it has its effect. It's meant to prevent the breakdown of telomeres or even extends telomere length in some studies. I don't know if they've been replicated, but there was one back a few years ago that said it was really good for that. And the other, obviously, I use the precursors to NAD and longevity. I think they're great. There's so much evidence behind them for boosting your NAD pools. But the novel and unique way that I like to increase NAD is by inhibiting the NNMT enzyme. And this enzyme is what clears NAD I've forgotten, I needed to brush up on this before we spoke, but it's basically, it recycles NMN back into the NAD salvage pathway and is capable of increasing your NAD levels better than the precursors would just by keeping it around. Kind of like how huperzine A increases acetylcholine. It doesn't provide choline like alpha GPC might, but it prevents the enzyme from breaking it down, so it hangs around longer. Well, that's pretty much what the 5-amino-1-MQ and the JBSNF00088 small molecules do. And yeah, they increase your pools, your overall NAD levels, your NAD pools, promote mitochondrial biogenesis, metabolic function, all the things that NAD does. But also using fisetin and apigenin, they're really good for reducing cellular senescence, associated with DNA, protecting your DNA from damage, helping with protect telomeres. And I think that's what the reason why I use epidolon as well, the telomere protection and even extension potentially.
Yeah, the 5-amino-1-MQ is also used for athletic performance. And I think it was Ryan Smith of Now True Diagnostic mentioned that he did a 2-week cycle of it or something and increased his vertical jump by some ridiculous amount, like 14 inches or something.
Look, I haven't personally had that level of benefit from it. I think it's just one of those things that, and kind of like if you were to take NAD, you would notice some level of improved energy. I think it's like if you took a really, really, really good prolonged dose of NAD, but it works a lot more. It works a lot quicker because you don't kind of have to build up the pool as fast. I think by inhibiting the clearance of it, you're able to build up your NAD pools faster than if you just take all the precursors to it. So that's why I think it's really good at increasing your mitochondrial energy production. And I guess for his vertical jump, by having increased mitochondrial biogenesis and increased NAD levels, he's going to have, improved power output. So, but I make no claims about vertical jump improvement from taking 5-amino, but yeah, it's cool anecdotal. And again, like maybe he never had taken NAD or NR and he just jumped on 5-amino. So it's the first time using something that's going to increase NAD levels. It's pretty profound versus if you've taken those other things and you've already built up your NAD pools pretty well with NMN, NR, or even the IV infusions of NAD, then you might notice the effects of a 5-amino or a JBSNF as much as if you're just new to it. So yeah, they're just new oral ways to increase NAD levels. I still think probably the best way would be to do the IVs, but yeah, I really like these ones as tools, oral tools to deliver a clinical effect.
I don't have the bottle in front of me, but is there a recommended time to take this? Because I think that 5-amino-1-MQ is one of the ingredients that impacts the circadian clock genes.
Okay. I always take it in the morning with my morning stack. Anything that increases energy, I don't really want to be in bed feeling energized. Not that it's like a caffeine, but yeah, I just always do it in the morning. Usually do neuro regenerate in the morning, total recomp and longevity all in the morning with my coffees, or if I don't have a coffee, just with my morning mix.
Can you absorb all those substances at one time?
Your intestines are the size of a tennis court. You can manage a few micrograms because they're in such small quantity. And most of them, because they're small enough, they honestly just passively diffuse across if they're below their 500 kilodalton. If they're a bit larger than with the liposomes, they'll get across that way. So yeah, you can definitely.
Well, that's reassuring. It makes it easier for everyone who doesn't want to have to spread their supplements out every 2 hours throughout the day.
The nuance would be you can't absorb like 30 peptides through your skin because you're putting it on this small little line. Like if you were to do topical peptides, we've been trying to do a skincare product using 8 of them and realize that, okay, well, they kind of compete for absorption in this small area. But when you're talking about your ileum, your small intestines, that's like so much area for absorption, you know, with all the villi and microvilli that are in there, that it's no such issue.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen this. There's actually a paper done by Kavinson, the Russian professor, about Apidolon. He's the guy who popularized that research. But he did one on Apidolon and I think it was Thymolin. And it was a long trial. I think it was the bioregulator forms of them. So the oral, don't quote me on that actually, it might have been injectable, but it was some insane improvements to all-cause mortality, the risk of dying from anything. Over like 6 years later, it was like, I don't even want to say the number, but it was something outstanding. So I'm not sure if you can get that into a capsule, but it might be worth considering in this as well to help like with the health of the thymus gland in the longevity stack, because thymus is something that degenerates with age, obviously.
Which one was that again? Sorry, thymosin.
Oh, this one was Thymolin, Thymulin.
All right, I'll have a look at that one. But yeah, he did a majority of the bioregulator research, and yeah, it did find extension of lifespan pretty reliably across, you know, different protocols using those. He did a lot of work on, or him or the university that he was associated also did a lot of work on GHK, because they used to think, well, it still argued that it might be a bioregulator as well. But yeah, the Apidolon is the one that in animal studies showed like a 30% increase in lifespan on like rats and mice. I called them rice together, rats and mice. And yeah, the telomerase activity, what is it? It helped to elongate the telomeres. Sorry, I was losing that earlier when we're trying to talk about it, which is meant to reverse cellular senescence. So the Thymolin, I believe, is not a bioregulator because of the length of it, though. So it might be. Okay. Yeah, I'd have to have a look at the. I mean, I can do it in the background now while we're talking.
Here's the study. It says Thymolin combined with epithalamin, which is the natural form of Apidolon, I think, as compared to the control group, they were treated with it annually for 6 years, and they had a 4.1-fold mortality decrease in that group as compared to the control. Fold mortality decrease in that group. I'm not sure Thymolin's a bioregulator though.
I've just had a look at it, and it's 843 kilodalton, so it's probably be a bit too large unless you were to liposome it or take it with something that increased. It's close enough that it possibly could work orally, but like a lot of the Russian research was done on injectable stuff, so that one probably did. Yeah, the Apidolon's really short chain, and most of the bioregulators are like 2 amino acids or 3 amino acids, so all of them, but maybe there's probably 1 or 2 exceptions that I can't think of, do work orally, and that's why bioregulators are great. My friend Nat Needham's probably the primary educator on bioregulator peptides in the world at the moment, so she could be a follow-up episode if people wanted to learn more about that. She knows a lot more than I do.
Awesome. Well, Kyal, anything else you want to discuss? I mean, there's a lot of other things in your wheelhouse that we could touch on. I know we're getting running low on time again. Where would you like to point people if they want to give any of these formulas we've discussed so far a shot, or perhaps if you want to list some of the other things that are the most popular and people you get the most glowing reviews and anecdotes about, you can point them to those as well.
Yeah, well, GR Repair is a hero product. We've got thousands of positive reviews on that now. It has so many things for gut health that it works pretty unanimously across the board. But I would actually point people to the new peptide cheat sheet guide that it's not even a cheat sheet, it's more of a comprehensive peptide reference guide now. The last year's version was short and sweet. This one's like really detailed. I've got a section on it which has like the top peptides for brain health, for body composition, for injury recovery, anti-aging. It's basically listed what they are and what they do. And then after it, if you want to get nerdy like us and find all the like a basic summary of the mechanisms and a bit more about the peptide, we've got that in it as well. And then on the front page is over 50 peptides and small molecules, and as well as the health systems that they, are associated with helping. Everything from all the injectables to the only thing I left out on that one with the topicals. I'll do like a separate guide for that one. But yeah, there's from CJC, ipamorelin, tesamorelin, Apidolon, BPC, KPV, they're all on that one, and it's a free download if people want to learn about them. So I'll direct people in that way, and then if they ever want to try them, a lot of them are in LVLUP health products. So we're a good source of those. Otherwise, injectables, there's plenty of good vendors you can try online. I don't know if you're personally associated with anyone, but there's a few that I know that I can steer people towards if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll let you do the guiding from that end.
Sure. And then do you have the link for that ready, or should we just put that in the show notes for the episode?
I'll make leveluphealth.com/urban your landing page where people can download that and they'll get your discount code there as well.
Cool. And I will also put that in the show notes in case you guys are driving or busy and unable to write that down. Kyal, thank you for joining me again on the podcast. Before we part ways, a couple other final questions for you. And that is, I was going to ask this in the warm-up, but I decided to hold off until the end. Are there any unusual molecules that you've consumed so far today?
Today's not unusual anymore, but methylene blue for sure. High dose of catawaba bark. My friend Lucas, Ergogenic Health, has released that, and it's synergizes really well with some of the dopaminergic things that I have, and it's like a stimulant-free caffeine. So head nod to him for using that one. And I did the HOCAT before this, so I'm a little bit hot and bothered, but yeah, I'll definitely recommend that again.
Well, perfect. And then if people want to understand your methodologies and what's informed your approach to health optimization, perhaps formulation, are there any teachers or books or resources you recommend?
It's the same as before. Ben Greenfield books like the basics. New books. I've got a toddler, so I basically haven't had any time to read anything in the last 2 years. And the level that I'm at now, I kind of just dive into science more so than I do actual resources and books. If people do want to learn more about peptides and become practitioners, I think it's William Seeds has a peptide, well, how would I describe it, as certification in peptide therapies. A4M are doing a lot around peptide therapies as well. And honestly, I think coming to places like the Health Optimization Summit, Hack Your Health, there's always a good showing of vendors will be at those ones. You can meet me personally at the one in Austin and at the A4Ms, but I really feel like if people want to learn more about peptides, A4M's really good as well as Seeds Institute. So, and our website has a lot of content on it as well. We're really building out a directory guide for peptides for people, as well as all the ingredients that we use in the formulations, sort of what makes them unique, what makes them beneficial, what they might be helpful for. So that's where I'm putting a lot of my effort into my son and building out the website, making it kind of like the biohacker's guide to supplements and peptides.
Beautiful. Well, I'll see you at the event in Austin. When you say that you're going into the science, are you talking about like looking through each of the studies on PubMed, or do you have a different way of approaching it that you prefer?
You know, the best place that I find new ingredients are actually the forums, and then I'll go on to find the science, because it's easier to have like an army of people who are all on the cutting edge trying to find the new best thing. And then a lot of the peptide forums on Facebook, they'll say, hey, has anyone tried this? And I'll maybe get some anecdotal experience saying it's amazing. And then I'll go on and go to PubMed and have a look around and see what the mechanism and how that might work. And then I'll got suppliers so I can then find why that might be fantastic and go from there.
I like that. That's exactly what I do too. And that's been the OG way of doing this with bodybuilders back in the day, of like scrolling, perusing all the old forums and finding latest things and actual anecdotes of what works and what looks great on paper but doesn't work. All right, Kyal, thanks again. And we'll all see you in Austin shortly.
See you soon, Nick. Thanks again.
I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.